Good morning to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, online viewers, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM and respective radio stations island-wide. I'm Rolika Roach and welcome to the live virtual Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. At this time, I invite the Minister of Justice, the Honorable Anna Richardson, to address you. Minister Richardson, you have the floor. Minister Richardson, can you kindly unmute your mic, please?
Again, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Rolika. Good morning to the Council of Ministers, support staff, members of the media, the viewers online, and those listening via radio. As Minister of Justice, I would firstly like to congratulate Team Leader, Mr. Ryan Peterson of the Immigration and Border Protection Services Department within the Ministry of Justice for winning the Motor World Frontline Staff Recognition Award on Monday, May 18th. Congratulations, Officer Peterson, and thank you to the management and staff of Motor World for launching this considerate and noble award program during this COVID-19 pandemic, and for also your donation of masks to the Ministry of Justice. To share some updates with the public from our police department and services, the KPSM implemented phase 2 of their COVID-19 de-escalation plan on Monday, May 18th, as part of their plans to mitigate the potential increase of crime on the island. In the wake of the negative effects the pandemic has had on our island's economy. Phase 1, which was launched on May 11th, was focused on the introduction and implementation of the plan to sensitize and collaborate with all stakeholders involved in preparation for Phase 2 and while analyzing the actions taken in the first phase. Since the de-escalation plan kicked off, the following results were achieved. Several scooters and cars were confiscated in joint operations by police, customs, KEMA, VKS, and the Marines. These vehicles were under investigation for being stolen or for not having the right documentation to utilize the public roads. The police also issued approximately 400 fines and arrested 18 persons for various infractions committed. Most of the arrests and fines issued were to persons who were caught violating the curfew. The police will continue to enforce these laws, which will not combine with traffic controls, actions to maintain public order during the curfew hours, and emphasis will now be placed on preventing armed robberies, breaking and entering, and especially as it relates to business community on the island. As we proceed with the phases of de-escalation, I, as Minister of Justice, I am asking the public to adhere to the laws of the land and to continue to practice the new normal of social distancing and ensuring that you use sanitizers and be of good spirit within our community. That's all for me in my opening remarks, and I'm available for questioning. Thank you, Rolika, and for tuning in.
Thank you, Minister Richardson, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure, the Honorable Egbert Duran, to address you. Minister Duran, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Rolika. Good morning to my colleague ministers, members of the media, and a special good morning to the people of St. Martin. Today, I will be updating you briefly on the following. Firstly, regarding the road painting, as it has been seen within the community that the road markings are being painted. The focus of the road painting is to tackle the speed bumps and the pedestrian crossings. The roads will be completed. The roads that are to be completed are Sucker Garden, Cul-de-sac, Cahill, K-Bay, Cole Bay, and Simpson Bay. The tentative schedule to have all this completed is July of 2020. On another note, I would like to update the general public on the permits expedition that we started a couple weeks ago in regard to the backlog in building permits. This team that I formed has been working diligently in the process of these permits. The process has been going well, and in the meantime, well over 21 building permits has been completed thus far. That still has to go through one more process before it reaches to me for final approval. Additional staff from the Ministry of ROMI will be joining the team as well to further facilitate this process. I would also reiterate that as a country facing these economic crises, the processing of these permits will generate much needed revenue for the government coffers. The Department of Permits is considered one of the primary income generating departments within the ministry and is imperative to maintain optimal level of functionality. It is my ultimate goal to streamline these processes and have them automated so that this can also facilitate in the expedition of these permits. Ms. Roach, I have a few updates, and that will be all for now. I look forward to any questions that the media might have. God bless the people of St. Martin. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Minister Duran, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Silveira Jacobs-Suggesyu. Prime Minister, you have the floor. Prime Minister, if you can hear me, can you mute your mic, please?
Good morning. Good morning to you, Ms. Roach. Good morning to the Council of Ministers. Good morning to the media in the House and those following the broadcast, as well as to all the people of St. Martin, whether here or abroad. I wish each and every one of you a hearty good morning. It is my pleasure to be here this morning despite a very, very long night, and knowing that the fate of this country is literally and has literally been in our hands. As a country, we sat last night for many, many hours together with the people of St. Martin as representatives and deliberated on what would be the best way forward for St. Martin. As such, people of St. Martin, I can only update you that the decisions made over the last few hours will have a lasting impact on our country. I can tell you that they have not been taken lightly. They have taken with your best interest in mind. The reality of the matter is that we as St. Martin have faced two major disasters within the past 3 years. The first being the disasters called Irma and Maria, or let's say three. And then the human-made disaster that was the looting and including the political turmoil that wrapped our country in the midst of a disaster. To avoid a recurrence of the human kind of a disaster that is not man-made, not whatever this pandemic turns out to be after investigation, but we know it is a worldwide disaster. This time it is not just the Caribbean basin in trouble, it is the entire world. We had to, based on our very vulnerable position, seriously consider what had been put on the table for us. For the matter of fact is, all politics is local. St. Martin's politics is what the St. Martin people focus on and what the St. Martin representatives focus on. We are elected and appointed to serve the St. Martin people. But because we're in a kingdom, we swear allegiance to the king and the constitution and the statutes of the kingdom as well. And it is under that premise that the meaning from the parliament, the opinions, the feelings, the sentiments of parliament was sought even in the short notice under which these conditions were laid upon us last Friday. As a matter of fact, the real conditions, the content of what had been discussed briefly or informed to us briefly in Tuesday last week was brought to us in writing less than 24 hours before the vote. Literally, Dutch time after 2 p.m. and a vote was expected by 10 a.m. the next morning. St. Martin scrambled, as did the other two countries within the Caribbean, to come to a decision of how to respond without throwing the money back. And so all three plenipotentiary ministers went out, they gave the dissatisfaction of their governments and asked for time to be able to deliberate, as we had not had enough time. The graciousness that had been extended only extended for a few days, and it was with a take it or leave it attitude. Take it or leave it. And we will learn the true extent of that as the days progress. It is with dismay, and I don't even know what else to call it, because I'm doing my best to remain unemotional about these things. But at the end of the day, we are all human beings, and we would like to even think for a minute that within this kingdom, we truly have each other at heart. That within this kingdom, we truly, and I mean truly, understand what it is to be representatives of the people we serve. And that St. Martin continues to be seen as the big bad wolf within this kingdom, the smallest country. But according to that same report that was alluded to yesterday, the one with the best chances of recovery after this. And that is what, it's good. When other people say it, we take it much more serious. So this blow that is COVID-19, while in the few weeks since it has hit both our partner in the Europe and us here in the Caribbean, proportionally, maybe they being hit harder than us, we are now faced with a test of what this kingdom truly means. What does it mean to be a Dutch kingdom partner? Is there respect within the kingdom? The kingdom relations that we have been trying to improve since entering office, because that constantly gets thrown in our faces, has been further eroded with this offer, with this proposal. And it literally, in the short term, meaning from last Friday to today, left us with little choice but to accept the proposal, as long as it does not erode our laws and the kingdom laws to which we have all sworn. So it is a take it or leave it. And I know the questions will be, but did you actually say yes? Yes, we said yes. We said yes despite how we feel. We said yes because this is a social economic blow to not just St. Martin, but the outer world. Had it just been a hurricane, we know that as soon as we open our doors, people will flock back, our economy booms. But if the same people who we expect to flock back are not yet on their own feet, how do we expect these people to be able to come back and help us build back our economy? As such, for the initial part, we will continue to focus on construction to get our much needed revenue moving in this country. We'll accept the initial part and work towards the conditions as best we can within our laws. We will do our utmost because that is who St. Martin is. That is who we are as a country. And we want to be able to stand on our own feet. So we will take this loan. The proposal from the Netherlands, let me move my screen a little bit. Can you see me still, Rolika? Okay, because I had to move it and I cannot see myself. I'm sorry.
Yes, Prime Minister.
The blow of the COVID-19 pandemic continues to show that St. Martin is far from where we should be. And this was thrown in our faces, and we see it in the propaganda already coming out of the Netherlands. They cannot handle it on their own. But when I hear this, I have to smile because I see large developed countries struggling. I see large countries such as Spain and Italy struggling and requiring financial assistance. So St. Martin doesn't need to be ashamed of the fact that we had a disaster 3 years ago, or that we are still recovering from it, and therefore, even in that recovery, needed assistance. But the assistance has never been free. The assistance had come as a result of our people having to suck back their pride and accept funding with conditions outside of a borrowing agreement. The borrowing agreement is easy to accept, very easy to accept. In fact, we are grateful for the borrowing conditions, but the political conditions, those sit a little bit sideways. But we accept, yes. As we speak, our letter has gone out to the kingdom through our plenipotentiary minister to the State Secretary Knops, and already the staff is saying, is it a yes or is it a no? It was very clearly stated. And I can quote from the paragraph after explaining how the people of St. Martin feel disrespected by the offer that notwithstanding all of the above, we will accept this insofar it does not trample on our laws. Not just our laws, St. Martin's laws, but the kingdom laws, because that's what each and every minister and parliamentarian swore to uphold in protection of the people of St. Martin. That is all we have said. Nothing outside of what our statutes say. And so, yes, we have said yes. Take it or leave it is a slap in the face of the people of Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin. But at the moment, we accept. Partly, as I said before, because of the disasters in 2017, we are in dire constraints, despite our resiliency with a reference to this same statute. We appealed for assistance, and that was also thrown in our faces yesterday, in a time when I thought we would band together. One time we are told as a government a couple years ago, you do not ask for the help of the Netherlands, who is our partner, willing and able to help, then you are a bad government. We asked for assistance, oh, but you only got these conditions because you asked for assistance. You open up yourself for this. Well, I didn't hear of any other proposal where money was readily available on this date. And so we will continue to seek other means of financing our needs, be it via loans, be it via other means, but St. Martin does not drop down and die. As a resilient people, we will continue to work together to ensure that we can one day, and in our 10-year vision, I see ourselves standing on a multi-pillar society, on a multi-pillar economy where everyone is empowered to contribute to the development of St. Martin, to the development of themselves first, and by so doing, to the development of their country, which they claim to love. The proposal from the Netherlands is maybe not the right answer or the answers we wanted, but we knew conditions were coming, and that is why we were already examining the measures we wanted to fast track. The conditions, as presented with limited timelines for implementation during this time of recovery, is not the right time to link aid to non-fiscal measures for St. Martin. But State Secretary Knops has reportedly stressed on the solidarity principle, and St. Martin would like to apply for true solidarity, for the application of the principle of solidarity. That is what we would also like. True assistance in keeping with Article 26 of the statute states, Nederland, Aruba, Curaçao, and St. Martin verlenen elkander hulp en bijstand, help and assistance. The proposal is not help or assistance. Maybe it can be seen as assistance, but it is indeed a loan. Let us continue to stress that. This is something we will pay for back in cash. A 0% loan as long as Holland can continue to acquire 0% funding within the EU. So if they have to pay interest, we will also have to pay interest. So it's only 0% for now. Let us not be fooled. Attached to it, the loan is only attached to a fiscal measure, that we can debate on whether or not they are feasible. but it is attached to Dutch political views on how St. Martin, as a constituent state within the kingdom, have autonomous powers to operate. These are attempts to enforce the views of the Dutch government on matters that we have opted to decide on by our own consciousness through our decision of 10-10-10 in our constitutional status. Yes, as has been said, we are responsible for each other collectively. This was said last night repeatedly. But that fact is nuanced by another principle within the statute, that is the gelijkwaardigheid, the equivalence. How equal are we? The crisis is exceptional and requires an exceptional and concerned approach by all of us. We do need solidarity and togetherness, even within our government and within our parliament. On the way forward, we need a great deal of wisdom, decisiveness, and vision to avert the imminent socio-economic collapse of St. Martin. We are all in this together, and everything we do is for the people of St. Martin and for the further sustainable development of St. Martin as a #1 priority. This, even with the bumps and hiccups along the way, remains our stalwart goal. We need to also walk the walk, take the actions and the tough decisions, and simply lead by example. It is not time for us to play politics, whether it is politics across the Atlantic or politics right here on St. Martin. While the future of St. Martin, the future of the people of St. Martin is left with much uncertainty as all over the world, it is time to start to govern St. Martin and work on the legislation for St. Martin in such a way that we will not be in this same position in the next 6 months to a year or ever again. That is the goal of this government. So we accept there is much going on that I can talk about, but for today, this is the gist of what the government of St. Martin is dealing with as a priority, and I thank everyone for their attention thus far. Rolika?
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing. The Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, the Honorable Ludmila de Wever, and the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, the Honorable Rudolph Samuel, are both present, however, will not be making any opening statements, but is available for any questions the media may have. We now move on to the question and answer session. The floor is open. Bibi Shah of SMN News, you have the floor.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Madam Prime Minister. Have the government of St. Martin discussed the decision taken by the Council of Ministers to accept the conditions, knowing that the union is rejecting any cuts from civil servants? Have this been discussed? Is there been some kind of consensus with the union, knowing that accepting this loan will affect their civil servants with a 12.5 cut?
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. As you know, and as the unions know, we were trying to avert a situation whereby we would be forced to take measures we did not want to take. We proposed several measures that, in the deliberation last night in Parliament, our Minister of Finance, could explain that, for instance, the conditions of the cuts that have been proposed, except that we did not have them extending all the way to our subsidized entities and did not include, for instance, the government-owned companies, etc. We were prepared as a government in order to meet the needs of our SSRP, make the necessary cuts, and support, our unemployed, because that's two separate groups. We were prepared to take cuts for ourselves. We went beyond what Parliament's motion had mentioned, 20%. And if you line that up with what the Dutch government has proposed as pertains to cuts in the package, overall package income of elected persons and appointed persons, they mentioned 25%. However, with our proposal of the vacation pay being cut and our 20%, government is already, appointed ministers were already taking a 26% cut of their total package. So that's not a problem. We knew that since February, the principle, the main issue with St. Martin's politicians is there's too much money in your hands. Now, I know, I can't speak for everybody, but I know that this Council of Ministers, as ministers, you work 20 hours a day sometimes, as can be testament to last night. Last night is that you can see it, but most of the time, it's 16 to 20-hour days. Any minister coming in for the first time today, and some of our brand new ministers was like, wow, if I know all of this work was going to be in it. You know, a lot of people could talk. A lot of people could talk about the funds. And it is left for our parliament and us as a government to determine moving forward, once we've gotten our economy in order, what any salary should be for the work that we're executing. But we know it is a principal thing by the Dutch as to too much money is being earned for this small island. But we fail to look at cost of living on this island. We fail to look at everything else. And so we were prepared to cut 26%, more than what the Dutch proposed. Great. The civil servants, we were not prepared to cut such a great cut from. But understanding that we need to help each other, we said vacation pay across the board, except for persons below 4,000 guilders. So we were not touching our lowest earners. They would receive no cuts. But with the Dutch one, everybody across the board. But I think we can fill it in how we need to fill it in. We can look at the total personnel cost of government and make the cuts where we need to cut them and reach to 12.5%. And hopefully not touch according to what we had planned originally. That still needs to be figured out. That's still our intention, to leave those persons under 4,000 alone. But it better can't be done, and we must fill it in as they say, and they take it, because if I read it the way we read it, it is a total package. So we have vacation pay, we have all kinds of things that is added on our pay slips other than the salary itself. And so we will do our best not to touch the salary itself, especially for those people, even with this new agreement, even with this proposal. We will do our utmost. Government-owned companies was never on our scope. We have to go and have those discussions now, because at the end of the day, yeah, what can I say about that? We were really, really concerned about the people of St. Martin not being able to have what they need in the SSRP, the businesses remaining sustainable, keeping money in the pockets of people so that they can continue to spend in the society, turn the money around. Send that same gilla to that person into a shop, to the next place, to the next place. That is called economic development. Making that same gilla go round and round the country. And notice I'm saying gilla, eh? I'm saying gilla. Because we gotta now honor that gilda. Honor that gilda, because which dollars are coming in at the moment, except what's in the World Bank Fund, in the trust fund, what dollars are coming in? We are sending dollars out, as a matter of fact, to all our financial transactions, including banks and those other areas. So for me, Misha, we have to figure out how to live up to these conditions prior to the 1st of July, and we will do our utmost to do that with the least possible pain to our civil servants. And we're asking the unions, if we had agreement ahead of time, we could have present a done deal. All we could say as we were in discussion with unions. So now the unions will have to sit at the table and take it just like how we had taken, because we don't have a choice if we want to help the other people. Yeah, so we will fill it in with our unions, with our government-owned companies, with the subsidized entities that receive at least 50% subsidy from government, and see how best we can fill in these proposed conditions to the best of our ability. And as per the deadline, which we thought was unreasonable, but it is what it is. Thank you, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Bibi, for that question. Judy Fitzpatrick of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Thank Thank you, and very good morning to everyone in the forum. My first question is to Prime Minister Jacobs. So Prime Minister, just as on the same train as PB, now that we've accepted the conditions or accepted the pact, what are some of the next steps that St. Martin will now embark on to meet the conditions? And also the Kingdom government wants, or they've requested, that the cuts from ministers and MPs go into the general coffers of government. As it is at the moment, 10% is going back to the pensions of MPs and ministers. How will this be corrected to meet that condition?
Judy, I don't know where you read the part about it going into the coffers. The cuts that we were proposing, if, I don't know if you got your hand on it, we had proposed cuts whereby we had general cuts in our budget, operational costs, and cuts along personnel costs. And a majority of our cuts were not necessarily going to cut off the overall budget, but because of a lack of income, which the minister clearly explained yesterday, 19 million guilders as compared to 40 million being the norm for April month in any given year, about half. So we were looking at, we have to cut a good bit to be able to continue to sustain as if we don't have assistance. The only assistance we had up until then with our SSRP was all assistance linked to the hurricane relief on our budget, and in which the CFT, in its advice to the Kingdom Council of Ministers in February, stated that we must have at least 2 months reserves. So we've been functioning all this while before that reach on less than 2 months reserves. And we were in high season. So, you know, that kind of, you don't really need it vibe was something we were getting. And, but we needed it because you need a buffer. And we did not have that 80 million buffer. So the 44 million or the 52 million approved would have created that 80 million buffer based on what we had in our reserves at the time. And based on the fact that we got that a few weeks ago, we were able to start paying out the SSRP. But that means, again, we gone below our reserves. So we are in our reserves. We are functioning in our reserves. And we can continue to function in our reserves, God forbid, any further disasters coming our way. And we would not be able to pay out the SSRP, but we will be able to sustain government. That is the reality of why we accepted the conditions. With our current budget or liquidity, we would not be able to continue to pay the income support to the businesses to help the people and businesses of St. Martin. But with our proposed cuts, we would have been able to assist the unemployed. But if you can't help that other group, your unemployed numbers would have grown and it would still be unsustainable. So the funding was needed. Again, we did not get enough chance to see how much savings the other proposed conditions would garner. And once we've done that, the next step is then to seek to fill it in bilateral discussions with the Dutch government. Bilateral discussions that up now have not happened to our satisfaction, even if the Dutch government considers calling a meeting, making an announcement. So what do you think about this general statement I'm making? Okay, thanks, nice meeting, see you on Friday. Or you hear from us officially on Thursday, Friday. If that is considered a bilateral discussion, then it is clear what is thought of St. Martin. So we are looking at every possibility for St. Martin to be able to meet the conditions, one, and two, for us to also look at alternatives for het geval that we do not meet those conditions and then have to stand on our own feet as per July 1st. So that is the plan. We sit, we put our heads together, Parliament, government, stakeholders, how can we make it through the next year as our economy reopens?
Thank you so much for that, Prime Minister. However, I think maybe my question was not clear to you.
The next
what I was
step
asking,
you asked for.
yeah, that's the first part. But the other question I
second
asked
part?
is,
I didn't catch the second
yes,
part.
the Kingdom government, what they've requested is that the 25% cut that has to be applied to the salary of ministers and members of parliament to go into the general coffers of government. However, as it is at the moment, 10%, the original cut that government had and ministers had agreed to prior to the COVID-19 crisis. This is going back into the pension of ministers.
So let me explain. I get where you're going with that question. And I said I did not read it that way. And that's why I didn't answer that part. But as you insist, I will go this far. Prior to us making that first 10% to go into a pension fund, where was the work health, the pension for ministers paid and members of parliament paid from? The general coffers of the budget of government. The unforeseen general budget, because it was never budgeted for. All we are doing now is sending it to a direct budget post. So it is going into the general coffers of government, so that the general coffers of government, is not used for that purpose. And not all ministers or members of parliament will be able to enjoy that work health, that pension, that hold over until you can get back on your feet, because no pensioner, no member of parliament or government of the legislative branch will receive that as long as they are at pensionable age. So they are paying it in without getting anything in return. The rest of us who are not of pensionable age will then be able to look from there. But in the meantime, if it is needed, it is not enough yet to sustain. So it is a fund that is being built so that government's funds are not touched. So in essence, we're actually saving the general budget of government with that cut.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Judy, for the question.
Hold on.
I would now like to, I think Prime Minister. Okay. I would now like to invite Jeffrey Sokran, Dr. Sok of Island 92. You have the floor.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for today's press briefing. I know it's been a long night for everyone. Prime Minister, was wondering, now that we've responded to the Kingdom and said yes, has our response been acknowledged, and have they've seen our yes and they understand we're saying yes, and we'll do our very best to comply with everything? And you had also talked about the Gilder, and what I guess I'm kind of worried about is, with the lack of dollars coming into the economy, are we worried about any possible devaluation of the Gilder? Is that a real risk for us?
I'm not a financial expert, Mr. Sok. I'm sure you're a better one than I am. From what I heard yesterday, that's the doctor in your name is related to your studies in finance and economics. I didn't know that. It's good to know. However, I do know that if we have a sustained lack of dollars, of course, that threat is there. However, as you see, we are currently de-escalating, and government is planning for the reopening of our country. What I can say is what many have not banked on, or in fact, that's why we're getting these quick conditions, agree now or else, is that within a month from now, when we have gone through our de-escalation successfully, and as I speak it, so be it, okay? Because it is that faith and belief that I have is why we will come out of this. Every crisis is an opportunity, and we will get the opportunity to build St. Martin and do all that has been lacking over the past 40 years, not just the last 10. And a lot of politicians who still want to play politics up to this morning, 40 morning, will make statements, even though they have been there for 30 years and have us in this position today. But to God be the glory, as another member of parliament has continued to say, because it is on his strength that we as a government stand today, and the people of St. Martin stand as blessed people. People are clamoring to come back to this country. I don't think a lot of the other islands or the large countries in the Europe understand that je ne sais quoi about St. Martin, that people come here for. Dr. Sock, you reach and you didn't leave. Michelle reached and she didn't leave.
You're absolutely right, Prime Minister. My phone rang off the hook all day yesterday.
People are ready to come in, and I am speaking it into existence that despite the push from the Dutch and the French, St. Martin will rise again, and in a month's time, look out. You will see the dollars flowing.
And the kingdom has acknowledged your receipt of yes.
Sorry, I forget that part. It's been a long night.
I can imagine.
Hours sleep. I'm doing my best. The kingdom, I did get a call just before in between. Our plenipotentiary minister told me that they are a bit concerned with a statement I made, and so I want to pull up that statement. If you would give me a second. Give me a second, please. Wait, that's not it. That's not it. Sorry. Can I come back to it, please? Give me a second. I will pull it up, and then once there's a break in between another question, then I will respond. I don't want to waste time.
Yes, Prime Minister, we'll move on. I would now like to invite Andrew Dick of TV Carib to pose your question. Andrew, you have the floor.
Good day to all ministers and, of course, the people of St. Martin. Question to the Prime Minister. Tomorrow, Ascension Day, I know that you've been getting that question, but just for clarity's sake, Prime Minister, can you give me whether tomorrow is a half day or not? Because, we're still during our lockdown period.
Yes, we're not doing lockdown anymore during the week. So as we are open, the majority of the week, this is the last week of Monday to Friday. Unfortunately, Thursday is a holiday. So just like with every other holiday, businesses that open will have to do the due diligence in paying the holiday wages. Yeah.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Andrew, for the question. Prime Minister, did you have the response for Dr. Sock? Okay, we'll move on now to the second round of questions. BB Shop, SMN News, you have the floor.
The letter.
All right. I will go back to Madam Prime Minister. Can you tell us what is the relationship right now between the French counterpart and the Dutch since the removal of the police at the borders on Sunday? Do you still attend meetings with the French? I think a meeting was scheduled for today or is scheduled for today. Is it the intention of government to go ahead and attend those meetings and still discuss, even though your side of the island pull out from the border closures?
Prime Minister, can you unmute your mic, please?
You close me off.
I did, yeah.
It's a chore for me to go between my screens. That's why people will see me looking left and right, because I'm trying to have my documents on screen and yeah, sorry, challenged this morning, but the devil is a liar. The question was French relations. I must say that again, as long as things go the way that certain European powers want, relations are great. The minute as a tiny country, and in this case 16 square mile country, with powers that are equal to the kingdom, the state of France, you end up with that kind of a problem. We have two different constitutions. As such, in the emergency, the prefet has the last say. That is the state purview, etc., etc. President Gibbs and his council is sometimes consulted, is sometimes not. In fact, in meetings, when we sit across the table, if both entities are there, we spend half of the time hearing the both different views. We try and stay out of the fray. Yeah. So in this fray, of course, as representatives of the people, both the collectivité and the government of St. Martin and the people of St. Martin understand the importance of a border. importance of a border without restrictions, the importance of one people, one island, but we can understand that the others do not understand it. So we have our discussions and we talk and we reason and we compromise. And I must say, I get a lot of flack during this COVID-19 for bending to the French. When the French put in there, when we wanted to close our outer borders, Europe was very, no, we cannot do that. It will mess with our European relations between French and Dutch, because the French borders were open despite the rampant COVID in France. Despite it. From the day I closed my borders to China and the others where it was rampant, I wanted to close to Europe as well. In fact, France in particular, because at the time, Holland didn't have it so bad yet. But the Dutch were like, let's be nice, let's play nice. Minister Jacobs played nice. Prime Minister Jacobs played nice, as long as we could. And when we could not any longer, we had to close. But by then, we'd already imported from Europe and the US and the Caribbean many cases, which we live with. We could take the name they give us. We have the highest per capita in the Caribbean. We have this, we have that, other than Santo Domingo. But it's okay. We're also gonna bounce back the fastest because we got it under control. We got it under control quickly because we said, let's contain. I am responsible for the sick people over here. Let's contain it. The only way to stop the movement, to stop the spread, is to stop movement. Let us ensure we have our individual cases under control, and then we move forward. And I'm telling you, in as much as was needed to be compromised, we compromised. I have begged over and over, let us do joint press releases so that the people of St. Martin understand this is something from both sides, with health as our priority. But then when they start throwing in your faces, but because you got too much cases over there, the border got to stay closed. But every day, I'm signing waivers for people to come over to work, for people to come over to go doctor, for people to come over to go to do their banking, to collect their pension, etc. And I'm being told, no, you can't go over because we don't have that service open. No, you can't come to the doctor. Ain't got doctors over there. No, that's not equal. That's not equal. And I dealt with that for 2 weeks whilst asking for us to have this discussion while we de-escalate. When will the borders be considered open? I could go, but so long. At the end of the day, all politics is local, and my people on St. Martin are being damaged by what is this border control, because it's not about COVID, it's not about COVID, it's not about health, because you had 0 cases, you do your community search, now you have 1 or 2. We did our community search, we found 1, that was 2.5, almost 3 weeks ago. To date, no new cases. We have our COVID cases under control, government of State of France. And you are opening your borders to allow flights to come in from Guadeloupe, where they are out of control still. So people who have business in France, visit French St. Martin and St. Barts, are allowed to come. They can go in quarantine for 2 weeks, but how am I supposed to know if they got business on Dutch St. Martin too, they could reach over here as well? So it's a risk we have to take. So let's put our guidelines in sync, like I've been asking, and allow the people to move freely. And if everybody's socially distanced, 6 feet or 2 meters, wear a mask, hand sanitize often, we cool. Obviously, they don't agree. Hopefully, in the coming week, we can come to an agreement, because I understand now they're willing to write a proposal in writing that we sign and agree, and our health ministry and theirs is working on that. There will be no meeting today.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
And I hope and pray that they will take the decision to release the controls and allow the St. Martin people to move freely.
Prime Minister Jacobs, and I understand your frustration, and I can see how frustrating it is when you had to deal with it. But why did you agree in the first place to close the border, knowing that all of these things are playing? You know, I mean, it is not the first time the French and the Dutch are having issues with border control. We can go way back a number of years with the Oyster Pond issue. So my question is, why did you agree? Why did you bend? Yes, you did bend a lot for them, but why did you bend to close that internal border?
That was was a bilateral discussion where we both agreed at the time, because we closed outer borders. Now we close inner borders, so that we as Dutch St. Martin, we had 2 ICU beds at the time. We didn't have the opportunity to ship out nobody to nowhere. As a matter of fact, even regular sick patients couldn't go anywhere. So we didn't have a choice. We don't have the finances, we don't have the means with 2, 3 ICU beds. So let us contain in our borders, because anybody who's French, and we had agreed on that, and initially when we only had a limited amount, if they could help, they agreed they would help if we reach our limit. But at the end of the day, it never reached there. We got the assistance, thanks for our affiliation with Sabre and Stacia. Thank God for the SSS Islands and Bonds that we continue to assist Sabre and Stacia. We continue elkaar bij te staan, zo nodig, in deze koninkrijk with our sisters and brothers here in the Caribbean. And we've never shut our borders to them. They continue to come for medical purposes, regardless of the lockdown, regardless of the no entrance into St. Martin. It didn't count for them. You understand? So I agreed. I, in fact, said we have to be able to assess our numbers. I wasn't forced back then. That was a bilateral agreement between French and Dutch. And we agreed we would de-escalate once the imminent health threat was over. For me, the imminent health threat on both sides is over. So it does not validate to be closed any longer.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Bibi, for that question. Judy Fitzpatrick of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Thank you.
May I say one more thing?
Again?
Before you go, Judy, can I please respond to Dr.
Yes,
Stock?
Prime Minister.
We have, as I said, submitted our letter. We have received a response of receipt, and we are still awaiting a response as to whether our yes is accepted as such.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Judy, you have the floor.
Excuse me. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Is Minister Duran in the forum?
Yes, Judy, he is.
Okay, thank you so much. So my next question is for Minister Duran, and it's on the whole issue of GEBE and its bills. Now, Minister, the company came out with an explanation yesterday, which suggests that the high bills that consumers are receiving is simply a result of the 2 months being lumped together, which you alluded to last week as well. However, many persons who have closely examined their bills, they're convinced that there is a calculation flaw somewhere. So by adding the 2 months together and applying the progressive usage rate, people are automatically paying more. My question, Minister, with GEBE insisting that it's one thing and many consumers insisting that it's another, a calculation issue, how can this be resolved without consumers feeling as if they're being ripped off?
Good morning, all. Thank you, Judy, for your question. I would like to say, though, the beginning part of your statements when you were given the storyline was not clear to me. Can you, in brief, reiterate? I heard the question, but if you can repeat the beginning part of your storyline.
Okay, so GEBE yesterday, they issued a press release with an explanation in which they are saying that the high bills that consumers are receiving, the high water and light bills, is a result of the 2 months being lumped together. Now, everyone was expecting 2 months being lumped together. However, a lot of consumers are still claiming that it is extremely high, even beyond 2 months. And a lot of consumers, upon examining their bill, they're convinced that there is some sort of a calculation flaw that is resulting in these high bills. So, for example, when you add the 2 months together and you apply the progressive usage rates, people are automatically paying more. So it seems as if consumers are being penalized for the 2 months being lumped together. And my question is, how can this be resolved? With GB insisting it's one thing and consumers insisting that it's another, how can this be resolved without consumers feeling as if they're being ripped off?
Okay, thank you very much. Now it's clear to me. Well, I don't want to speak on the behalf of GB nor on hearsay. I have experience and gotten phone calls, as I said last week, and in the meantime as well after the many media reports. I would, however, like to clarify one thing before answering your question. Last week, when asked a question as to what are my intentions, I mentioned that contact GB customer service or my person. In the meantime, this was cleared up. I want to, however, send a message to the public and reporters and everyone on a whole. At the end of the day, I am responsible for what I say and not what you choose to understand. With that being said, a couple of weeks ago as well, when I made mention of the fact with the issue with landlords and tenants and all these different things, I highlighted the law. And it was said that Durant and Minister Durant stated that you don't have to pay your rent. Now, at the end of the day, I understand the arena that I'm in, and I understand as well what can be misconstrued from what not. So I just want to clarify those points. To answer your question, Judy, after discussions with the management board of GB, all complaints that were given to me will be and have been sent to customer service of GB, and follow-up will be made to establish if these complaints have been resolved accordingly. Now, based on your statement and question, I will follow up with the management board of GB and get back to you with an answer as soon as possible. They published an article, it was released yesterday and published today. I mean, this few clause and discussion has been ongoing for quite some time. And it is definitely one of my top priorities to bring clarity as much as possible to the people of St. Martin in this regard. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Minister. And while you just one quick follow-up, I wanted to ask the Minister if thank you so much. I just wanted to ask the Minister if when you're meeting with GB, if you can also look into why, with the cost of fuel being so extremely low on the world market, why is it that this seems not to be reflected in our bills? And thank you so much again.
Will do.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Minister Duran. Just for the clarity of the members of the media, this will be the final round of questions as we are running up on our time slot. Jeffrey Sokrin of Island 92 Radio, you have the floor.
Thank you, Relaika. Good morning again. I'd like to touch on the whole tourism, the return of tourism and the timeline associated with it. I don't know if this is best addressed by the Prime Minister or Minister De Wever. Really, what is the timeline that we are expecting for the return of tourism, as it relates to the airport, as it relates to the readiness of our overnight accommodations, as it relates to what we think the entry requirements will be for returning visitors to the island? And, do we think that it's going to happen June, July, or later, or at some other point in the future? What do we suppose that the timeline looks like at this point?
Thank you, Dr. Stock, for that question. Prime Minister, would you be able to answer, as Minister De Wever is no longer in the meeting?
I was so looking forward to the minister defending this as she started to last night. When did she go? You sure she's gone?
Yeah, she's not in the meeting anymore.
Oh, I wasn't so much paying attention because I assumed she was there. I think I mentioned a little earlier, Dr. Sock, that my goal is as we de-escalate to phase 4 and allow businesses to open, that we, given the readiness of our airports and having all the guidelines and social protocols in place, hygiene protocols in place, the serology tests. That's funny, actually. Last night, one of the MPs said something about a serology test, which, I'm waiting to hear what the feedback is, as they've been in Curacao since Friday, and why we haven't received any yet, when we were promised, met an afspraak in an actual meeting that we would receive them quickly as first priority, because we know what the situation is. But regardless, we are looking into getting the name and the brand of these tests that have been approved by our kingdom, and purchasing them if necessary with the assistance of the business community. I know many had already approached me, Carrefour, you name it. When Kentucky wanted to open, before I allowed for restaurants to even drive through, they were prepared to pay to test their employees, and that is great corporate responsibility, because it will take away from what government has to invest in these tests. So I will be sitting with the Minister of TIAT in our back to business. St. Martin is blessed. Come back and see, come back and to your Airbnb, come back to your vacation home, because it's safe. We want to be able for the airport to do what they have to do, and include testing all their employees, include testing all the employees at the port, include, for instance, that we at the government building can test all our people, et cetera, and that our taxi drivers and other frontliners can be tested, and that we can also ensure that those coming in are tested, and that we have tests to give them, that within a day, then they're free to roam, because, we know your status, at least at that moment, and we are ready to go. So Dr. Sock, in my dream, because they tell me I sounded a little Martin Luther King-ish last night, but it is that kind of a dream that have us where we are today, right? You got to dream it to believe it and work on it to achieve it. So I am aiming for mid-June, when we are planning to de-escalate to phase 4. I am aiming for that. And from what I heard from our Minister of TIAT, together with her task force and together with the airports and ports, this can be very much feasible. The people are clamoring to come back. So you can tell all the people, line up, start making their reservations.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Dr. Sock. I also see we do have Minister De Wever back in the meeting with us. Minister De Wever, are you there?
Please add, Minister, please.
Okay, Minister.
Look,
Dr.
you make me
Sock,
go
if
and
you
talk
would be
without
able
you.
to.
I know. Good morning, Ms. Rhodes. Thank you for the question, Dr. Sock. Good morning, PM, colleague ministers, members of the press, and the viewing public. Sorry for the short time I was away. But the question, Dr. Sock, was regarding when we were our timeline of when we're going to reopen and what we're busy doing to prep for that. So yeah. I must say I've been having great conversations with the hotel owners, timeshare owners, and they have all been proactive, and I'm very, very happy to see how many of us are proactive right now in preparing the hotels to be ready, changing the way the restaurants in the hotels are set up. And as well as the hotels, you have even the businesses attached to the hotels, such as casinos, that have all been proactive to create their own guidelines. What we're doing is, with the task force that's set up by the EOC members, they are in touch with the hotels, airport, port, the individual businesses, marine sector, to make sure that all of the guidelines that we're getting from all of them is approved by VESA in terms of the proper protocol health regulations that are accepted from CDC, other renowned global, associations that have trusted oversight. So one of the things we didn't want to do was reinvent the wheel. And like the PM said, yes, we were looking at mid-June for it. And even originally, we were looking at July, but we want as much as possible to be prepared if we can go earlier, if the numbers still hold, if we all still remain safe and cautious and have our proper hygiene protocols in place with the mask wearing, sanitizing. The other thing that I did want to mention is that the conversations are ongoing as well with the public transportation, because everyone has these additional measures that we are all required to do to give everyone, not only our residents, but our visitors, a sense of security and safety that we are ready. And within the coming weeks, we are planning with the different businesses, airport, public transportation, harbor, even the hotels, to do a sort of introduction video that we're ready. So the process of being a day in the life, almost, from a traveler arriving to St. Martin, going in a taxi, going to the airport, so that everything you see the day in the life video, that we're safe and we're ready to go and ready to receive you and welcome you back home. So thank you again.
Minister DeWeber, if I could just ask one clarification, if I might. What do we expect I'm a Princess Juliana International Airport inbound passenger. I'm arriving from the United States or Europe. What are the protocols? What are the entry requirements that we're thinking will be required for inbound air passengers?
So the meeting was held yesterday with the airport and with CPS and with members of the task force to finalize those guidelines, that protocol. And it's, one of the things that people are still looking at is, the temperature. So they're looking to get some kind of comfort from their starting city, where they're departing from. And the airlines, yes, have their own protocols that they're coming up with related to whether or not they do only one seat or one space in between. You're required to have a mask. There is consistency across in terms of the safety equipment that you have, the safety procedures, the sanitizing hands, the mask, spacing. And for us, it's a matter of just finalizing before we get those first flights in, just to coordinate and make sure everyone's on the same page with what we are requiring. So that's being finalized within this week.
Thank you, Minister DeWeber. Thank you, Dr. Sock, for that question. Andrew Dick of TV Carib, you have the final question.
Final question. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is I guess we could call it a two-part question for the Minister of Education concerning the exam students. I know you've been receiving some letters from concerned parents, but you didn't address it during this press briefing. And also for Minister Doran concerning the hotel development, Planet Hollywood. The Court of First Instance made a decision recently concerning the building permit. What's the backup plan? What's the plan B?
Thank you, Andrew, for that question. We will start with Minister Samuel. Minister Samuel, can you kindly mute your mic? Thank you.
Good morning to you. Good morning to the medias. Good morning, PM, and my colleagues from the Council of Ministers and those who are listening. Thank you, Andrew, for the question. Yes, I received a letter from the students, the Haverhill students of the Milton Peters College, and the core of the letter was in regards whether or not they could have gotten extra time. I have answered the letter to the students, and I have outlined to them that the regulation that laid down whether or not they can get extra time is at their school or school board, with whom we have continuous communication. Andrew, what is very important to take into consideration is that the exams in St. Martin are not only for St. Martin. It is an exam that is collaborated between the partners in the kingdom, which is Curacao, Aruba, and St. Martin. We together have laid down certain guidelines, and it is very important that we, St. Martin, adhere to the guidelines. Adhering to the guidelines will guarantee the integrity and the validity of the diplomas that will be given to the students this year. And while I can understand that as a student you would be asking for more time, I also will have to take into consideration my responsibility and making sure that the diplomas received by the students of St. Martin are all valid. So I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Samuel. Minister Duran.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roach. Thank you very much, Andrew, for the question posed. I would just like to update that upon hearing about the verdict, I've had several meetings with the Department of Permits and also with my cabinet as well as to determine a way forward. As I explained, all these weeks, construction is very important for the development of our country, especially in the interest of the economy bouncing back. And I would like to reserve the right not to answer the question right now directly in regards to our outcome, but know that it has a top priority of the ministry, and I like to have all my facts in line before I make a comment on it. So within the coming days, I will definitely give, maybe even by next week Wednesday, I will definitely have an update for the media and the people on St. Martin on a whole. I would like to reiterate the fact that I feel it is a top priority, as this will create, I believe it was 1,000 direct jobs and more than 1,000 indirect jobs via construction and various means. So it is definitely important for me, given our current crisis. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Minister Duran, and thank you, Andrew, for that question. Members of the media, this does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. Thank you for being part of this press briefing. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this does bring us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. For rebroadcast, be sure to tune into St. Martin Cable TV, channel 115, St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and YouTube channel Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the official government's website at stmartingov.org. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Rolika Roach, and wishing you a pleasant day further.